hey, protect our civil liberties, champion individual choice and all of these things, saying I love my country and I cherish freedom. People are like, gosh, you sound like a right-wing conservative. What happened to you?
The Babylon Bee Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Babylon Bee interview show. We're hanging out today with Tulsi Gabbard. How you doing? Thanks
Aloha.
for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you
Aloha.
for having me here.
You just said aloha.
Already.
Yes.
We're
Can we
starting
get
off
the
right.
aloha counter on the screen, please? We were wondering if aloha, if there's anything that it doesn't mean in Hawaii. Like, we just,
yes.
It's like the I am Groot thing, like we can just...
No, it's
Hodor.
not.
Hodor.
Yeah.
Aloha, aloha. Because even when you're emailing with your team, you guys all keep saying aloha. Like you start
Yeah.
the email with aloha and then you conclude the email.
Here's one of the funny things that someone has legitimately asked me in Hawaii is if mahalo means trash, because all of the like trash bins throughout Waikiki and everything, they all have mahalo written on the trash bin, which obviously means thank you.
Obviously.
Oh, okay. So
It's like, no, mahalo does not mean trash.
put your mahalo right in here.
Right, exactly.
I got your mahalo.
No, aloha is it's a word that is used as a greeting because it doesn't actually translate to hello or goodbye or anything else you might want to try to toss it in for. Aloha has a pretty spiritually foundational meaning, where alo means to share and ha means it's a recognition of the eternal spirit, life force that exists within every one of us. So essentially, when you greet someone with aloha, you are starting that conversation with the recognition that we are all children of God. We are all spiritually connected, and it allows us to see past all of the noise and the labels and the divisiveness and whatever other like stuff gets in the way of having meaningful dialogue and conversation.
So it's kind of like shalom.
I've been
or
told that
salam.
before. I've been told that before. And in Hawaii, I have seen shirts and signs that say shaloha.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Why did you not think of that?
I know.
Why did you not?
Shaloha.
Yeah, come on, get on your game, man.
So if you want to own the atheists, you just say aloha.
Right.
Aloha,
It's like
atheist.
atheist. Got 'em.
Checkmate.
Do atheists say aloha? Or
That's a good question.
because it's
I think
kinda
they
like
do.
a spiritual thing.
Because they don't know.
Because they don't know.
Well, I guess they'll say like, "Oh my God" or whatever,
They do say that.
and it's got God in there. But
Yeah.
anyway, so if I'm gonna visit Hawaii, what's the best island? You have to
Depends
pick
on what you're looking for.
one. Oh, okay.
So I represented for 8 years the 2nd Congressional District in Hawaii, which includes every island in the state. The other district, there's only 2 in Hawaii. The other district is the south shore of Oahu, which is the most populated island. So when people fly into Honolulu, that's usually the midpoint to get to anywhere else. So if you're looking for like the city life and you're going, and I don't know why people would come to Hawaii to be in the city and just go to shop or whatever. But if that is the experience you're looking for, you go and stay in Waikiki because you got the beach right there. And then you have all of the other stuff that really you would find in any other major city.
So if I want to go clubbing,
That is where you would go.
clubbing there.
So
That
when
is where you would go.
On my honeymoon, I went to Waikiki. And unfortunately, I wish I would have gone somewhere else. We had no idea. We were
was
kids.
Most people
first
don't.
one.
We were just kids.
Most
and
people
not to
don't.
say that it's not a great place.
Of
It
course.
is. But we did happen to see a really great fight on the street.
I'm sure you
That
did.
was like a whole gang of people versus this one really tall guy. And he beat them all up.
Oh, wow.
It was a great fight.
Yeah, you'll see just about everything on those streets.
Yeah.
You've got the street performers and you've got the music and the guys break dancing for change and all of that. But if you want to go, Kauai is probably the most quiet kind of small town vibe island because it is. Maui, you get a little bit of like you want to go and stay in a fancy resort, but also go hiking and waterfalls. The Big Island, Hawaii Island, is the most. I think it's probably the most diverse ecosystem. Has the most diverse ecosystems all on one landmass, where you can go from a black sand beach to a lava field to a jungle to like rolling hills and ranches, to dry section of the island. And so just depends on what you're into.
Now, how do you properly do this thing? Is this, if I want to like...
We could spend an entire podcast on that. So what
My wife just visited and she
complex.
told me that they can tell if you're like a poser, like here.
the posers do like the tight fisted,
Really like
yeah,
this,
like
hey.
I'm trying really hard, like shaka, bro. And the ultra local like bradas, you like, it's like that loose. Like you can barely even tell.
I can't even tell that
It's barely. It's just like,
They just kind of do this.
yeah.
Do they go
pretty close?
multiple times, or is it like
It depends. It depends on the scenario.
You got to feel
You
it
can
out.
you can find like Instagram videos on this that translate
Okay.
all of the different, like, what is this versus this versus this, and like,
This
you
is
know,
really
do you do it
offensive.
once?
This one
do
is
you do
really
it twice?
offensive. This
do you
is
like
ALOHA.
shake it out? Do you go like this? Like, there's a whole
Oh my gosh.
there's a whole thing there.
this one's racist?
This is a racist symbol. This one's good.
This one's okay.
Be careful.
The biggest tip for people going to Hawaii, if you've never been, is just be nice and be respectful. And you will be
That's
you
harder.
will be treated
Harder than it seems.
with kindness in return. The biggest this like local people, and this is the same for anywhere, but when you have people coming from the outside into your home and they treat it like trash and, you know, litter or treat local people like trash, then obviously you're not going to get a very good
Drop
response.
mahalo everywhere.
You're right.
Mahalo.
All
There's
over
all
the
this
ground.
mahalo over here.
Put it in the mahalo bin.
Right.
It's kind of hard to believe that this is real life and not satire. Under New York law, social media networks must create a system for users to report online speech the state disfavors and endorse the state's mislabeling of some speech as hateful conduct. In other words, the First Amendment freedoms of satirical websites like the Babylon Bee hinge on whether they'll adopt and help enforce the state's ideology. But free speech shouldn't turn on whether the government has a sense of humor. It's clear government officials are trying to bypass the First Amendment to keep ideas they disagree with out of the marketplace. Join ADF as they stand with the bee and others in defense of free speech. Just $19 a month will fuel the stand to help protect our freedoms. Join adf.com/bee and pledge your monthly gift of $19 or more to ADF. Together, we will boldly advance our right to live and speak the truth. Every gift helps. Go to joinadf.com/bee and stand for free speech with your gift today.
So Hawaii's a great place.
Hawaii's
So-
wonderful.
So you're there and then you decide to get into politics. So
Yeah.
like why'd you do that? Defend that
I
decision.
was I was 21 years old, and I was trying to make a decision. I growing up in Hawaii, it is a beautiful place, and I grew up just knowing that two things. I wanted to pursue a path of service with my life. I didn't know what it would look like. I certainly didn't think of politics probably in my top 3, but I saw how our local politicians, many of them, they didn't care. They were like, they saw it as like a post-retirement gig, kick your feet up, go to some parties, do some work maybe, but they were just grossly out of touch with reality. And so I was 21 and I made the decision I can either go to school, I didn't have a bachelor's degree, I can go to school and talk about politics, political science, history, civics, whatever, or there was an open seat and I had the opportunity to actually just like go do it. And so that was when I decided to run for office. It was when I had to decide what party to run under. I didn't come from a family of legacy party politics on one side or the other. And both in Hawaii's history, but also in some of the national figures that I saw in the Democratic Party. Generally, broadly, I saw a party that fought for the little guy, a party that was a big tent party that welcomed people with different ideas, backgrounds, religions, views, defended free speech, even if it was not speech that was liked or popular. Civil liberties were important. These kinds of things I felt very aligned with. So joined the Democratic Party and ran for state house to try to bring about some change for my community. Never once thinking like I'm going to be in politics as a quote unquote career or for my life. And my time there was short-lived. I served for one term, was campaigning for re-election when our National Guard unit, our 29th Brigade Combat Team, was activated for a deployment to Iraq. I got a call from my commander, and he's like, "Hey, good news, Tulsi, we don't need you to go. We've already got somebody filling this slot in the medical unit that you would have filled otherwise, so you can stay home, keep doing the good work you're doing, and we'll see you in a year and a half." And there was just, I knew right away, there was no way that I was going to just stay home and wave goodbye to my friends and fellow soldiers as they deployed off to Iraq. This was 2004. And, this was the height of the war. Most of our unit at that time, they hadn't seen a deployment since Vietnam. So almost no one had any kind of war zone or combat related experience. And so I withdrew from my re-election campaign and volunteered to deploy with them and served. We were in Iraq for over a year. I served in a medical unit there, and it completely changed my life. It opened my eyes to the world outside of my home in Hawaii, the realities of the very real human cost of war, the war profiteering that goes on. And I came back from that knowing that I couldn't go back to the life I had left behind, but also wanting to be in a position where I could help take those experiences and use them in a positive way, but I wasn't quite sure exactly what that would turn out to be.
Wow. So you came back from war and you're like, I want to go into politics now. This is how I can make a difference.
I really didn't know. I literally I was learning and I was exploring. I had just, had a life-changing experience still in the National Guard. And, my aunt's best friend from high school in East Grand Rapids, Michigan, happened to be a very high-ranking person at the UN, for example. And so I thought, okay, well, let me start there. Let me go learn more about the United Nations, and called her up and said hey, this is where I'm coming from. Still no bachelor's degree, whatever. And I called her up and she took my call and we had a great conversation. And I said, well, is there anything that I can do there? How can I use this experience? And she said, well, do you have a master's degree and do you speak 2 languages at least? And I said, no and no. She's like, well, there's no place for you here.
Okay.
Go look elsewhere. And I did. And I went down a bunch of different paths and ultimately ended up working as a legislative aide for one of Hawaii's U.S. senators who was the chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee at that time in Washington. And so that was my first taste of Washington politics. But the timing was perfect because I was able to inform him with the truth of the experience I had just gone through, not only the deployment, but what does that post-redeployment process look like? The VA chiefs are coming in and giving these fancy PowerPoint briefings, and here's what we're doing for this new generation of soldiers that's coming back. And yeah, sure, briefs well. And then so I'm looking at it and laughing to myself, in not in all cases, but in many cases, oh yeah, we got shown that brief in, 15 minutes or less. And it was click, 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 click. Cool. You guys saw the brief, sign your name so we get credit for having briefed X number of thousands of soldiers, and it not having a meaningful impact in bringing us something of value. It was more for show than for providing something that was useful, frankly. So anyway, it's one of many examples, but it was a great opportunity, I felt, to be able to help inform people in the U.S. Senate, my boss included, with actual knowledge and information and experience versus what they very often get across all committees in Congress, which is, the 4 stars from the Pentagon are going to brief you what they want you to know. Maybe it's not always what you need to know in your job as an oversight branch of government over the executive.
Yeah. Well, you talk about war profiteering and all that so what kind of things did you see on the front lines that fed in?
So our brigade was about 3,000 soldiers, primarily from Hawaii, but also from Guam, Saipan, and American Samoa. You may know from your visit there, but we have a lot of Filipinos who live in Hawaii. We have a lot of Japanese Americans. It's like this ethnic melting pot in our camp that was like, there was one contractor that had every single contract for every service provided in our camp, and that was KBR Halliburton. And everything from the porta potties to, they had people like who could turn in our laundry would get washed and dried and then get it back. People who were cooking meals, people who were, lugging the trash out. Most jobs that didn't have to be done by soldiers were contracted out. And, okay, got it, understand. They kept costs down by importing people from the Philippines, from Sri Lanka, Nepal, people from a lot of other countries who had a hard time finding work. And so they'd come and it was natural for us to make friends with them because it was like, yeah, you're like, my auntie back home. Mm-hmm. And so in our conversations with them that usually took place like behind the tents where we lived, like around a portable rice pot and like a wok, and everybody's cooking and eating the good food, like asking them like, how much are you getting paid to be out here? Like, oh, I get paid $500 a month. It's like, oh, how do you get like time off? Yeah, maybe I get one day off. Not always. How often do you get home to your family in the Philippines? Well, I'll be lucky if I get 1 week a year, but it's usually like 2 or 3 weeks every 2 years. It was just...
That's how much we pay Jarrett, actually.
Is that right? Yeah. Oh, no wonder you look very nonplussed.
Like what?
You're like, yeah, what's the problem here? And then I started asking... and maybe this was because I had just come from the state legislature. So, I was curious about, how are taxpayer dollars being spent? And I started asking like, oh, how much is the taxpayer being charged? If they're bringing people in, paying them $500 a month to cook food for service members, 4 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, midnight, chow. I found out, and I may be off by $1 or $2, but I found out that every time a service member walks in the chow hall, there's a person standing at the door with a clicker counting. And every person that walks in the door, no matter what you get, if you got, 10 pieces of toast or a banana or whatever it was, every person that walked through the door charged the U.S. government $35 per person per meal. And there were thousands of service members who lived on that camp. That was one of the larger camps in Iraq at that time. And that was just like that one little example.
So that's $35 per meal, 4 meals a day per person that goes in there.
Yes.
And so
that's like over $1,000.
Yes.
No, that's a lot per person per day.
And that was, these
I
are
should have
just
been
like
a defense contractor. That's what I'm hearing.
Halliburton. I should have worked for them.
For Halliburton.
That's crazy.
It just,
but that's all over now. That's all done.
Oh yeah, they don't do that anymore.
Clearly they're all out of business, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, they're doing good. No.
Yeah, nothing weird
What's
going on.
What's funny is somebody that I deployed with during that early deployment to Iraq sent me a note recently because they're deployed to Poland right now. They're like, guess who's doing all the contracting in Poland?
Halliburton.
KBR Halliburton.
Yeah.
And so it...
maybe they're just really good at it.
Hey, something's working.
Just throwing it out there.
Something is working.
Devil's advocate.
Maybe they're great. That sounds real fishy.
The point is that a lot of people, it brought a lot of reality and questions from that first deployment in my mind about the politicians making these decisions. Are they really thinking things through? Turns out not so much. Not asking basic questions that one should be asking before you start a war or deploy troops into a war zone, before you start spending billions and trillions of taxpayer dollars. And, the more I learned, the more I saw how, the more angry I got, frankly. And seeing the warning that President Eisenhower gave ringing more true today probably than it was when he delivered that farewell speech, talking about the dangers of a cozy relationship between Congress and the military-industrial complex. And ultimately, after that, I went back on a second deployment to the Middle East, and that was what motivated me to run for Congress, where I served on the Foreign Affairs and Armed Services Committee specifically because that was the answer to that question I had asked when I came back from Iraq during that first deployment was, how can I be in a position to directly impact these decisions that are being made?
Do you feel like you really were able to make a difference while you were in Congress? So
in some ways, yes. In other ways, incredibly frustrating because there are just a lot of politicians from both parties who are so locked into this Uniparty system where, war is a big business.
Yeah.
There are a lot of lobbyists and defense contractors and relationships and things that make it so that, well, if the decision is war or like, hey, maybe we should just like look at this for a second before we go and place us yet again in a state of perpetual war, it's very tough to break through because of that power. And as I have seen throughout my years in Congress and since, if you dare to question or oppose or challenge that uniparty that is for war, the answer is not an honest dialogue and debate of the pros and cons of whether or not we should take this specific course of action, which is to go to war. It's an immediate slander, smear. You're a traitor. You want another 9/11 style attack in America. It's exactly what we saw when the Patriot Act was passed and why people, like Ron Paul and others who were saying like, hey, this is an egregious overreach into our civil liberties and privacy. We should really take the time.
It was called the Patriot Act. So
yes,
you're anti-patriot. This is what
and that was,
that
is what you're hearing. And it's the irony is real, but it was intentional.
You are
intentional because literally people who opposed it were called traitors.
Traitors.
I Love Puppies Act.
You don't love puppies.
Yes.
You are
It's
a puppy
kind
hater.
of, this is not an apples to apples comparison, but this is the more recent example of this was the, what was it called? Like the anti-inflation, the Inflation Reduction Act. Yeah. Actually, read it has nothing to do with reducing inflation at all. It just spends more money.
You're one of the most interesting people in politics because you have withdrawn from your party, though. Like you were a Democrat.
Yeah.
And I find that very interesting and very brave in our culture because you're risking all this cancellation and, people calling you a traitor.
It was not a hard decision to make because I felt that I had done all I could to try to bring about changes within the party from different positions that I held. As a member of Congress, as a vice chair of the DNC, it's something I talked about a lot when I was running for president in 2020 in the Democratic primary. And it increasingly became very clear that not only were the powers that be in the Democratic Party not interested in change, they felt directly threatened by me and my message, and therefore retaliated in every way they possibly could. Not unlike the way we see how they treated Bobby Kennedy, and frankly, not unlike the way we are seeing them resort to the same playbook with Donald Trump. It just reveals, and this is what I get into with my book, is in so many different ways when we look at many of the fundamental concerns and problems that we have with the country as Americans, not Democrats or Republicans, they are on the wrong side of those issues because they care more about power than they actually care about solving problems or what the best interests are of the people in our country.
Well, it's funny when you were talking about joining the Democratic Party and why you chose to join, all those things you listed about why you joined, I'm like, that's not the Democratic Party.
Exactly. That's exactly the point.
Today.
Yeah.
And that's the funny thing is
Maybe back then.
It was.
what-
I mean,
yeah.
I'm like, I'm getting old. I was like over 20 years ago, but like all of those things, when I'm still going around, I'm talking about those very things, talking about freedom and freedom of speech and how important it is for us to not have these crazy purity tests and be willing to have dialogue and conversation and, hey, protect our civil liberties, champion individual choice and all of these things, saying I love my country and I cherish freedom. people are like, gosh, you sound like a right-wing conservative. What happened to you? Like, what happened to me? What happened to the Democratic Party? And that's where, as the common saying goes, I didn't leave the party, my party left me. The shift has been radical over time, but especially over these last, I would say probably over these last like 6 to 8 years, the Democratic Party, institutions like the ACLU that used to be defenders of free speech for everyone, they've kind of shifted into this total conformist. You must all walk in lockstep. There's no one in the Democratic Party anymore who advocates for peace. There's no one that I've seen in the Democratic Party anymore who advocates for civil liberties. Or freedom for that matter. And they're doing the opposite. They're saying, well, freedom of speech is not absolute. And like, hey, I don't like your disinformation. So we're going to put together this board in the government that's going to decide you don't get to speak. Yeah. These things that...
The Ministry of Truth.
Exactly. It is Orwellian, except it's happening.
Yeah. Men aren't women.
Right.
And men shouldn't beat up women in MMA.
Yes.
Wait, what?
Right wing, far right wing.
Yes.
That is extremism.
Yes.
We've got the book here, For Love of Country, Leave the Democratic Party Behind. We have a nice little...
I'm glad that we got the used copy.
It's weathered. It's weathered. The book's been through some things.
Yeah, that's right.
It's been to an actual war zone.
This is a well-read version.
It is. Exactly.
Marked out.
Endorsed
Yours,
by...
if you order it, it'll be new and pretty, I promise.
It'll be brand new.
Yes.
Endorsed by someone named Joseph Rogan.
Oh,
some small-time podcast.
Joseph Rogan. No, I never heard of him.
Never heard of him.
Look him up. You might like him, I think.
Yeah, we talk about a lot of the points of departure, like freedom of speech and freedom in general, and like things like men playing in women's sports. And it does feel like these are very basic things that 20 years, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we all would have agreed on. So do you feel that way? Like the party left you behind in some ways? Like, have your positions really changed that much? Or
fundamentally, from a values and principles standpoint, no. Obviously, as you drill down into different issues, the more I learn about different things, as I always have, then I'm always open to like, hey, is the position that I hold as well informed as I thought it was? If there's new information, I need to reevaluate. What is, what is that most constitutionally aligned position? But from a principles and a values standpoint, no, it hasn't. And that's where, the subtitle of the book is Leave the Democrat Party Behind. And I am direct intentionally because my decision point was, how can I be aligned with a political party that not only hates freedom, but is trying to actively take our freedoms away on so many levels? I took an oath of office, both as a soldier and as a member of Congress, to support and defend the Constitution. How could I even be associated with a party that is so actively trying to destroy our freedom, and also that fundamentally believes that the Constitution is not relevant to our time or is passé and needs to be relooked at? It's such a dangerous place. And this is what's at stake in this 2024 election. Mm-hmm. And this is the message I'm carrying everywhere, is if you cherish freedom as an American in every respect, if we don't take action to defend those freedoms and stop the Democrat elite from trying to take them away and destroying the foundation of our country, I am certain that if they're allowed to stay in power, we will see the devastating effects of their policies that have been rolled out over the last 3.5 years escalate rapidly, and the country that we know and love will become unrecognizable.
Mm. Wow. That's pretty intense.
Wow.
I was thinking, well, are you finding a lot of allies in your stance? You've come off and you've made this strong stance. Who is it that has really come up beside you and has been, yes, Tulsi, this is exactly right. Let's do this together. Yeah. Is there anyone? There's
just a lot of everyday Americans, people who I've never met before, who will send me messages or who I'll meet along the way, whether it's happenstance in the airport or at different events. people who have been feeling the same frustrations that I've felt for a long time. Some who still, consider themselves Democrats, but are very angry about what the leadership of the Democratic Party is doing. But many others who are frustrated with the political system as a whole and recognize the need for it's not about like, oh, well, one party's good, one party's evil, or, hey, this one person is going to go and save our country. It's a frustration and a recognition that there's a lot of problems with political leaders who are abusing their power. There are a lot of problems with the administrative state and the bureaucracies who don't respect our democracy and think, hey, we'll just wait out whoever gets elected and we will push our own agenda. Or the abuse of power that we're seeing play out this year within the Department of Justice and the national security state. People aren't stupid. People aren't stupid. They're busy. They're trying to live their lives and survive, but they're not stupid. So no matter how many times, and you guys have done created some great material on this, but no matter how many times Joe Biden and Kamala Harris say the border's secure, people see what's happening. And they know the truth. No matter how many times, I don't know, I feel like you could go down a whole list of falsehoods that we are told on almost a daily basis. We can see that the economy's great. Bidenomics is working awesome.
The DOJ is not coming after you.
Right, exactly.
The NSA is not listening to your conversations.
Exactly. Yeah. Wink, wink.
Yeah. we
Wait, can you say that again a little louder? We didn't catch it the first time.
The FBI does not have a profile on you.
Right.
Yeah, especially if you're conservative.
Is the Republican Party that much better? Like I know there are certain areas where the Republicans at least pay lip service to we did an article on the Babylon Bee one time that was like, Christians trying to figure out if you should vote for this party who openly hates them or this one who at least pays some lip service to them, Yeah. And that's kind of like, sometimes that's the decision that we find ourselves faced with. So it's like, especially from your time in Washington and being in politics, like, do you find that are there a few good ones left that are fighting for things, or I don't know?
There are. I mean, there are some good ones left. My main message is,
I'm asking if you're voting for Donald Trump. No,
well, here's
we'll
what
name a few. You tell us if they're good or not.
Right, exactly.
Imagine that you just want to express what you believe. Now, imagine having to spend more than a decade in court just to do that. That's what's still happening to Colorado cake artist Jack Phillips. He's been relentlessly harassed by the state of Colorado and an activist because of his beliefs. But our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom are standing by his side, and they need your help. Join with ADF and be a champion for freedom. ADF is on the front lines defending Americans like Jack in court, free of charge, when their First Amendment freedoms are on the line. And for just $19 a month, you can stand with people like Jack too. So visit joinadf.com/B and pledge your monthly gift of $19 or more to ADF. ADF is committed to the long game of protecting freedoms now and for generations to come. And I am too. Are you? Because it's really important. Go join adf.com/B and be a champion for freedom with your monthly gift or any amount of gift today.
There are folks in the Republican Party that I have, former colleagues of mine, people who are of influence, who I believe are very bad for the country and who also don't care about freedom at all. And I've been outspoken about this. People like Nikki Haley, there is almost no daylight between her and Hillary Clinton when it comes to foreign policy, which is a dangerous thing. There is no daylight between her and those who pushed the Patriot Act across the finish line. Back then it was Bush Cheney pushing the Patriot Act across the finish line, which most people don't realize. They thought that, and this is the way that it was sold, the Patriot Act, this is all about what happened on 9/11. We have to pass this fast in order to protect us from a future terrorist attack. The reality is that the national security state had been trying to push those authorities for years prior to the attacks on 9/11, and were unsuccessful for years because members of Congress rightly said, like, yeah, this stuff is not constitutional. Like, this is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. No, we're not going to pass this. So they saw an opportunity and were able to shove everything through quickly under the threat of, if you don't support this, you hate America, you're not a patriot, you're a traitor, and you want to invite more terrorist attacks onto our soil. So what we have to do as voters and as Americans is exercise the responsibility that comes with the power that our founders gave us when they told us that, hey, our government exists only with the consent of the governed. And that means we have to do our job in looking at, not just be like, okay, cool, I'm just going to vote straight party line on any side, because, all white people are not the same. All Polynesians are not the same. All Republicans are not the same. I know you look a little confused. It's okay.
Wait, what?
We
just look the same.
We can't and shouldn't judge people based on a label. So we have to do our due diligence and hold elected officials accountable. And if they are not acting in the best interest of the country, if they're not keeping their oath and upholding the Constitution, they shouldn't be in power, regardless of what party they're in. We have to demand more and expect more and hold leaders accountable. Otherwise, we're going to continue to get more of the same that we've been getting for too long. I will say this about the Republican Party, though. This is the ironic thing. I started talking about the Democratic Party was the big open tent party. Now it's the conformist party. The Republican Party, people complain about sometimes. They're like, they can't get their act together. They're always fighting with each other. It seems to resemble more of that open tent party where you've got people with some radically different ideas and views on policies and the approach and everything else, which to me is encouraging, because we should be having pretty fierce debates on how we tackle the big issues of the day.
That is interesting.
Could you beat Nikki Haley in an MMA fight, do you think?
Yeah.
With my hands tied behind my back.
Oh, wow.
Oh, this sounds like a challenge. Yeah, that sounded like a Mark Zuckerberg.
Because we have a surprise for you in the other room. Please come on in, Nikki.
She's got her
Let's
gloves,
go.
Got her gloves on. That's so crazy. So you actually did do some fighting and stuff.
Well, I grew up, we were talking a little bit before we started. I grew up doing martial arts, a few different kinds. Absolutely have loved it from ever since when I was a kid. I was Taekwondo, Tai Chi, Qigong, Filipino stick fighting, arnis. I did Brazilian capoeira, a little bit of jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is the one that I have always wanted to actually learn a lot more of, and just I move around too much. But I was that tomboy kid who would spend afternoons going and kicking trees and running barefoot up mountains just so that I could be tough and ready.
You watched a lot of Van Damme growing up.
I think it was just like visceral. I didn't, but there was something inside me. So when I know you guys talked to Gina Carano recently, someone who's a friend, and I've told her this story as well, but she was the first female MMA fighter to have a televised fight. Really. It was awesome. Super inspiring. And I remember telling one of my friends at the time, watching the fight, I was like, psh, I could do that. And so there was a good minute there. I was like, hey, that'd be pretty cool
if this politics thing doesn't work out. Right. We could probably arrange something with Gina Carano. I'm just saying.
Would, for the record, I'm not trying to fight Gina Carano. Yeah. And honestly, you know what, and I've told her this too. Do you know Chris Cyborg?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
I met her in Hawaii. She had a fight there a couple of years ago. I had dinner with her and her husband. The reason why I chose not to go that route was because of Chris Cyborg. I don't remember who she fought.
Yeah.
But she is a beast, and she demolished whoever, I don't even remember, but it was just like, yeah. Because she and I would have been in the same weight class.
Yeah.
Gina Carano, I think, was in a different weight class. But anyway, I told Cyborg that when I saw her, I was like, yeah, you're the reason I don't ever want to face you in a ring or an octagon or anywhere. I am a big fan of the sport, though.
It is cool.
It is. People don't, I mean, if you're not into it, I think people don't realize how much goes into that for them to be successful. It's incredible. and how much they have to just like scrap. I went to this tiny little fight in Houston once. The guy who's like the matchmaker for UFC, Mick Maynard.
Yeah.
I went with him and his wife. They used to own like a tiny little promotion in Houston. And so they still go and support the community. And I went with them to this local fight in a community center. And it was so cool. Just so cool to like all the families were there, and it was super rowdy and loud, small. But after every fight, the guy who won the fight would get up and look at Mick Maynard, knowing what he does for a living. They're like, call me. Look at what I can do. But these guys are fighting like they're not making any money on these fights at all. And for a lot of them, they're fighting for years, hoping for that one shot to go and like be on the Ultimate Fighter or be
one
on
shot,
like the
one opportunity
Mom's spaghetti
to get everything you ever wanted. roll the track.
There you go. Yes.
Yeah. Can you rap with us, actually, Tulsi?
No, I'm going to leave that to Vivek Ramaswamy.
Do you listen to music though?
I do.
Are you a music person?
Yeah.
Do you like music?
Do you like? Do you remember that?
I do love music.
What's your favorite kind of music?
It depends on my mood, really. Like if I'm working out, I hit like the AC/DC playlist on Spotify. I was getting ready this morning. I had some Matis Yahoo on there.
That's cool.
Bob Marley. Hawaii's got a lot of local Hawaii reggae. I like country music. It just depends on what's going on.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Music is appropriate for the time.
That's cool.
You ever listen to ska?
I was deep into ska as a teenager. I was like hardcore ska.
like
not too many people know that. Like I'd go to the little like local ska bands.
Kind of like third wave, like punk ska. Or
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Had like I had like all this. I bought all the CDs. Do you remember the Warped tour?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So they came through Hawaii one year, and
Rad.
I
They
went.
were like Real Big Fish. And
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I was right into it. I went with some of my coworkers who I don't know. I was like 18 or 19 years old. I don't know, but I went with a bunch of my coworkers who happened to all be boys of around the same age, and maybe I didn't know any better, but I went in and I was like straight into the mosh pit, and the boys were standing around the edge like, you got to be careful. Like, watch your head. I was like, what are you doing? Like, let's go, man. This is why we're here.
Would your friends call you Tulsi or they call you Gabbard?
Tulsi. Yeah.
Okay. Nobody was like, hey, Gabbard.
That happened after I joined the military.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah, that's when that started. The funny thing is, like, I'll meet random people. Usually it's in the airport because I'm in the airport a lot. But they'll come up and be like, "Oh, Gabby, I love you so much." Oh, yeah. I don't know where the Gabby thing came from, but it's become a frequent
combination of Tulsi and Gabbard.
Yeah, I can see someone getting
confused.
Yeah, this guy's like, "Hey, Gabby, I love you so much." I was like, "Oh, cool. I'm Tulsi. What's your name?" He's like, "You're who?"
What?
Like, oh,
Never heard of that.
I was the wrong person.
Never heard it.
So you ran for president.
Yeah.
Recommend or don't recommend?
Know what you're getting into?
Yeah. Was that fun?
How can you define fun? Use it in a sentence, please.
Would you say it was aloha?
Was it?
Or
I
was
brought aloha. It was both very disheartening in seeing and experiencing like the toxic underbelly of so much of our I don't want to say our politics, but the political kind of conglomerate of political power, politicians and the mainstream media and the big money and all of that, big tech, all of that. And then it was also inspiring every day that I had the opportunity to go out and I had like 4 or 5 town halls a day everywhere I went, visiting small towns. I made it a point to always go visit like the editor of the local paper and go and talk to the local radio stations, and really, it made me hopeful for our country, and I'm still hopeful for our country because I know there are so many Americans across our country who really do love our America and are concerned about the direction our country is taking and want to be a part of the solution, but are understandably frustrated because they're not quite sure how. Or, is it possible to break through these powerful forces? And my answer to them was and is the power of the people is more powerful than all of their power and money and influence, which is why they're so afraid of us and a free society who think for ourselves, who can speak freely, and who can exercise our voices and our wishes and hopes through at the ballot box.
What's the end goal for these power players that are trying to take over? What do you think their end goal is? Is it just to have control? Is it money? What is it? These people from the World Economic Forum that want to have the population or something, like what is their goal?
In the deepest, most dangerous sense, they whether they realize it or not, they really believe they're God. And they want to create and manipulate and, orchestrate whatever their version of a utopia, so-called utopia, may be. And we can see this through a lot of the policies that they are pushing for or enacting both here, but also the things, their arrogance, their attitude, the things that they are so easily talking about at places like the World Economic Forum, where you have these globalists, these multi-billionaires, these people in different positions in different industries, just sitting back and talking about the world that they are trying to create and all the tools that they are using, and very clearly recognizing they see the rest of us as little pawns on this, sand table where they're building out the kind of future that they want to see, which is obviously dangerous and pretty scary when you follow their train of I was going to say train of thought, but they're actually doing it. It's not just a passing thought.
Yeah. What's the C.S. Lewis quote about a dictator that is like the most terrifying thing is a dictator because he thinks he's doing it for the good of his subjects,
yes,
or whatever.
That's right.
Like,
yes.
He's always saying he's doing. I totally botched that quote. Put the real quote on the screen.
Yeah, that's right.
It's true though, and almost all of them do. They almost all feel as though, as we are hearing now and here with this election, well, we have to save our country and save democracy by taking away the right of voters to choose who they want to vote for as president. And with the court ruling around, the unanimous ruling, thank God it was unanimous, striking down that Colorado case where they were trying to keep Donald Trump off the ballot. The response, I was just surprised they said it out loud. People like David Axelrod and others throwing up their hands and saying, well, unfortunately, the courts didn't do their job. Now we have to leave the fate of democracy to the American people. I know. It's
amazing.
I'm glad they said it out loud so that people didn't have to assume.
Won't do their job.
Right.
By upholding the Constitution.
But that is how dangerous they are, though, is they have that mindset of like, well, we need to take your freedom away in order to protect you.
Yeah.
Probably not, but during the 2020 race, did Trump ever come up with a funny nickname for you?
Not that I know of.
I don't think so.
Gabby.
Not Gabby. That I know of.
Probably during the primaries, he probably let that all sort itself out before he.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't think he would have. Actually, I think you're right. I'm not aware of him kind of putting his targets on anybody other than.
Yeah, he'd probably wait till
Biden and
And DeSanctimonious.
Yeah, that was this time.
Oh, that was this time.
I get mixed up between the two times Trump and Biden have run against each other.
Yeah, no kidding. A lot's happened between then and now, though.
Now, when you dropped out, you had to go off and endorse Biden. So,
it was.
You'd like to say to our viewers about that? How do you feel about that?
It was, I had hoped that would be an opportunity for me to try to influence him to listen to his better angels. He talked a lot during the campaign about trying to bring the country together, keeping us out of unnecessary counterproductive wars, and so on and so forth. And I had hoped that, obviously it was clear I was not going to, he was going to be the nominee.
Right.
He wasn't the nominee yet at that time, but that was my intent in doing that.
Well, I assume in all the party politics, it's always like, all right, you better get in line, like there's stuff behind the scenes going on.
Well, yeah, I mean, the party gave up on me. Had given up on me a long time ago before that. But it was just, and I didn't help him. I didn't, beyond that single statement, I didn't do anything to help him advance his position in any way, but was obviously disappointed and disheartened to see that every step along the way, from the very first day he was in office, he chose the path of darkness and the path of war and divisiveness.
Do you think that the Democratic Party left you behind at the point when you handed Kamala Harris her butt on stage?
That was the moment.
That was my favorite moment.
All the lizard people were watching. She's out.
No, that was amazing. Dude, I just got to say, that was incredible. It was like one of the best moments of any of the debates that I saw.
I had a total on in every one of those debates I participated in. I went back and looked just actually as I was writing the book, because I wanted to make sure that I didn't imagine this. But for every debate, I had a total of 6 to 8 total minutes of talking time in a 2-hour-long debate. And so when I think it was Jake Tapper was the moderator for that debate, when he came and asked me the question that he had prepared to ask me, I had planned to question Kamala Harris about her record on criminal justice and being the Attorney General of California, and the fact that she was on every day saying she's going to be a prosecutor president. She's proud of her record. I wanted to ask her about it because I was shocked nobody else did. And it was clear to me that the Democrats were kind of like anointing her as she's going to be the one, and she fits all the narratives, and they were handling her with kid gloves. I was frankly surprised that she was not prepared with any kind of answer, really, to what I pointed out about her record. It was
you've actually interacted with her, but it doesn't seem like she's prepared for anything.
It doesn't surprise me anymore.
Any time. Yeah, like
it doesn't
I don't know
surprise
that she's
me
ever
anymore.
been prepared for
I didn't really know her at all before then. But I was like, hey, I've read her resume like everybody else. Like, she's climbed the ladder of politics in California. She became a U.S. senator. She's running for president. Yeah. Like, there's got to be something there.
Upstairs.
Something. Sadly for the country.
Did you see our sketch, Kamala Harris's speechwriter?
I don't know.
Do you want to see it?
Oh, yes, I did. The kid.
The kid.
He's better.
That's my son, by the way.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Right on. Very impressive.
Kyle wrote it, but
very impressive.
My son acted it.
He delivered it very well.
Yeah, he was very good.
Actual footage of Kamala Harris.
Did you see Kamala Harris's husband recently was on Andy Cohen and on Bravo TV? And Andy Cohen asked him, like, have you ever seen the show Veep? And Kamala Harris's husband looked at him and said, I live it every day.
Oh my gosh.
Dude,
That's what I said.
That's crazy.
Like, I don't think you're supposed to say that. What? I don't know. Like, have you seen the show?
Like blinking, help me.
Yeah, maybe he has it. Yeah. Please get me out of this situation.
Well, I think that's what frustrates so much of us about politics is you watch these debates and you're like, the person who has the best answers or like gives a thoughtful response or brings up a nuanced topic, they're not the ones who win the debate or the primaries. It's like there's somebody that's been picked, by the network to get more airtime.
And that is the truth. Yeah. That is exactly the truth.
We saw it with Ron Paul. You see it in the Republican primaries. You see it every time.
Yeah, the smartest people don't win ever.
Well, and they're
probably true.
Yeah, that's right.
And it is. I mean, it is intentional. It's not by mistake. And this was one thing that it was a tough lesson I learned. I naively came into my campaign to run for president thinking like, yep, I know super underdog status. It's going to be tough to raise money. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to reach as many people as possible. But at a minimum, I will have just as much of a chance as anyone else on that debate stage to make my case directly to the American people. And very quickly realized, no, that is not the case. You don't have as fair a chance as anyone else because the party leaders are working directly with the CNNs and the MSNBCs and the NBCs and ABCs. And, you go down the list of networks in deciding like, hey, here's the people who we deem as credible, who we want people to hear from. and these other ones not so much. And it was me, and it was Andrew Yang, and primarily. And it was not by accident. We both had like 6, 7, 8 minutes, and you like, okay, tell me Elizabeth Warren, or talk to me Kamala Harris, or tell me Joe Biden. What do you actually think? And it didn't stop there. Then it's just like, okay, how do we smear Tulsi because she has the audacity to say, hey, we shouldn't be going and like be the policeman of the world. We should actually think about what's in the best interest of our people here at home. And then they go from trying to limit exposure to smears and cancellation and pretending that you don't even exist, like a total media blackout. And if all of that doesn't work, then it's just like all out destruction. How do we completely destroy this person's prospects so that voters don't even see them as someone they should consider?
So as a DNC insider, who are the people on top that are giving the orders?
Well, I'll tell you, when I was vice chair of the DNC, it was the chair. It was Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Okay.
And it was interesting then I looked at the rules of the party, and I knew, okay, the party is supposed to be neutral in a primary election. That's like 101. Make sure that it's fair, and that's your job. But I saw how, I don't know if you remember in 2016 when it was Bernie versus Hillary, Debbie Wasserman Schultz single-handedly decided, like, no, we're going to cut the number of debates down. I think it was like 6, and then she was forced to expand it to 8. Let's make sure they're scheduled on the days when, like the Super Bowl is playing or whatever, when nobody's actually going to watch these debates. There were very clear signs that she was tilting the scales. So it's the chair. You look at President Obama has influence. Hillary Clinton has influence. There are a lot of people who, don't hold any kind of office, who exert their power either through influence or through money.
Wow.
It's the deep state lizard people.
Deep state. So it's Obama, is what I heard.
You're summing up your answer. It's Obama. So you've agreed that Obama is running everything.
But it's, you look at, President Biden put Susan Rice in charge of his domestic policy in the White House. She is a former high-ranking official from the Obama administration. He put Jake Sullivan in charge of foreign policy to head the National Security Council in the White House. He was Hillary Clinton's right-hand person on national security and foreign policy. And those are kind of the two main high-ranking people. And then you look at who else is like populating those positions of decision-making, policy-making within the Biden-Harris administration.
And they also have decision-making power over whether or not you actually debate at certain times. So like with Biden, is he actually going to do debates?
I doubt it.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. He couldn't hold a candle to.
I feel more confident in saying that now after he turned down the Super Bowl softball interview. Mm-hmm. If they're not even willing to put him out there for that, can you imagine him against Trump for 2 hours during primetime TV?
It would be so awesome.
It would probably have record viewership.
I would love
at least the first one.
I would love to see it. Oh man.
I don't know. I have a lot to say about those debates. Like, yes, our candidates should present themselves to the American people, present their positions, have that side-by-side comparison and contrast. But also, as we've just pointed out, those debates are political theater, purely political, like for ratings and everything else. They're trying to make money. There's not much substance of value that's coming through in those debates.
Yeah. It does kind of show you whether or not a person has the
stamina,
the mental capacity to be able to handle these.
That is true.
Stay up past 8 o'clock.
I mean, like Pierre from Canada, I'd love to see him debate, Joe Biden.
Oh, man.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Or Trudeau, for that matter.
Oh, Trudeau, dude.
So we're now all thoroughly depressed about democracy.
Why are we laughing at that? That's not good.
Well, that's what we do for a living. Laugh at terrible things.
We
thankfully.
We close every interview with the same 10 questions. But before we do that, is there a word of, like, what should we do? Or is there a word of
Absolutely.
hope? Or
Absolutely. I am hopeful. I am truly hopeful. We are, there's a lot to be depressed about, but we shouldn't be, because our hope the guide to our path forward is laid out in our country's founding documents. And if you haven't read them recently, for anyone who's watching or listening, just go back and take a look. Read them again. Take a moment and reflect on our founders' intent in very carefully choosing the words that they put into those documents, because it is a call to action to every one of us on exactly what to do in this situation, because they knew how fragile democracy is and how human beings are, unfortunately, if in a position of power, very easily lost into, hey, let's just go and take more power because we're better at it and we know what's best for people than they do for themselves. We have to save our country. We have to take our country back and bring about this government of, by, and for the people that our founders spoke of. It's not some blasé, easy task. It requires being informed. It requires hearing different views and understanding what's most important. It's understanding the distraction tactics that are being used, like, hey, yeah, we got this whole open border situation and we know terrorists are coming through our borders, but hey, look at this other thing over here, because we don't want you to focus on what is actually important. Pay attention not only to what people are saying, but what they're doing, and then make sure that we get out and vote according to those values and principles of freedom, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are the things we have to come together around as Americans, knowing that they are directly under threat, specifically by those in power today. Yes, it's the Biden-Harris administration. They need to be thrown out of office. But as you're looking at your member of Congress, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, question them, challenge them, hold them accountable according to these fundamental issues and other issues you may be very passionate about. The onus is on us. We have to own our responsibility and see it as an opportunity to exercise our right as citizens to make sure that our country is the country that we want to continue to live in and that we want to raise our kids in.
Mm-hmm. But Ketanji Brown Jackson warned us that
white people are bad.
No, she warned us that the right to free speech in the Constitution could lead to
people
free speech,
expressing free speach. That's right.
You get dangerous.
It's like it could lead to people speaking freely.
Like, but what if the government wants to stop them?
Yeah. They can't stop. We can't stop them.
The 10 questions.
We ask these of every guest. Some of them are weird. Sorry. The first one is, have you ever met Carmen? And if you don't know who Carmen is...
When did you graduate high school?
He's a Christian rapper. Or he's dead
I've
now.
not met Carmen. Okay. When did I graduate high school? Like 97, 98? I was homeschooled, and so it's a little, Okay, I didn't walk across the stage. It wasn't some big deal.
My kids are all homeschooled. We run a homeschool program, 1,100 students. Just want to point that out.
What is it?
It's called Legacy.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. My wife runs it. She's
I'm
great.
a huge proponent of it.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
So cool.
I am so grateful that my parents chose to homeschool us. For them, it was, it wasn't like, oh, you're not allowed to go to public school and this and that. Like, there was a time I thought, like, maybe I do want to go to public school for high school. I want to play sports and this and that.
Yeah.
And my parents are like, all right, this is up to you. It's your decision. Just know that these are the things that this is what you're going to deal with. These are the things you're going to give up. And once we talked through it, I was like, oh, no, I don't want that.
Sounds terrible.
I know.
That sounds terrible.
One of my older brothers, I have 3 older brothers, and one of them did. He's like, screw this homeschool stuff. I want to go to high school. So he went. My parents were like, all right, go check it out. Tell us how it goes.
Yeah.
I think he lasted 3 months. And he was like, no, this sucks.
That place is Mahalo.
Yeah. Mahalo. This is Mahalo. Dude,
but despite being homeschooled, you've never met Carmen.
Yeah. Carmen would have been appropriate for your age range. I was just asking.
All right.
Yeah.
No.
I graduated in 97 too.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good year.
Yeah.
Are you a Calvinist or an Arminian? Free will. Mm-hmm. That's actually the opposite. It's predestination versus free will.
Okay.
Is what is the real question. Yeah.
Free will.
Okay. Arminian.
Okay. Thank you.
You get to add one book to the Bible. What is it?
Oh, man. I would not be so presumptuous.
Or what's a great book that you recommend? In addition to Tulsi Gabbard's For love of country.
You can't pick your own book.
You can't pick your own book.
We judge
For love of country, go out and buy it.
We judge authors based on whether they pick their own book.
Any book?
Yeah.
Any book.
Yeah. One book you think everyone should read. And
I will give you a book that probably most people have never heard of.
Okay. Yeah.
It's called Musashi.
Okay.
If you listen to Jocko Willink, you will have heard about the book. But it's a fiction story about a samurai, old samurai warrior from his childhood to his, I won't ruin the book, but throughout his life. And there are some pretty incredible life lessons about discipline and focus and dedicating your life to a purpose that is greater than your own.
Great.
What was the name of that book again?
Musashi. Musashi.
Okay, I'm gonna have to get my kids. We read the kids Jocko Willink books.
Oh, cool. I'm just gonna warn you. It's a big read. I did the audiobook, and it's like 25 hours long or something.
Whoa!
But it's great.
Cigars or pipe?
Neither. I am not.
You don't smoke at all.
No, never have.
Oh no, we'll ask that later. Sorry.
Okay.
Don't split. You get to hang out with any three people, living or dead. Who are they?
Oof. I will take Abraham Lincoln. I will take Martin Luther King and Gandhi.
Okay.
Now, if you
you know what? I will change Gandhi to Nelson Mandela.
So Gandhi comes back. You're like, you know what?
Gandhi, Nelson's over here.
If they give me a fourth option.
Sorry,
Back to wherever you are. That's crazy. So if you could fight any three of those guys, which one would you fight?
Oh, that's
not one of our questions. Yeah. Whiskey or beer?
Neither.
You don't
I don't
drink
drink.
at all?
Never drank.
You don't drink or smoke?
No.
That is, that's impressive.
What do you do?
Most impressive.
What do I do?
What do you do?
I drink tea
It's very healthy.
and kick trees, you know.
What would be the first thing you would do as president?
Ooh, this is a person with an actual answer.
Oh, I know.
I would immediately deploy the necessary resources to secure our border.
I think that's the right answer. Have you ever punched anyone or been punched? And is there a good story there?
Not punched, but kicked.
Is it a good story?
Both kicked and been kicked.
We got Van Damme over here. What's going on? All right, Van Damme, tell us about it.
Like I said, you cannot be a practitioner of martial arts if you have not been punched or kicked at some point and also punched or kicked someone else.
Yeah. Have you ever
good training.
like outside the ring? Like,
Not outside the ring, like no street fights.
Okay.
No street fights
Just all
in
in the
Waikiki. No street fights.
No, not yet at least.
All right. It's coming. I'm just kidding.
You get to go to one concert, any band in history. Who do you go see?
Have you ever heard the record where they did a Bob Marley, Lauryn Hill like song together, using kind of just putting their voices together? I would love to see them both perform together and sing together live. That would be pretty incredible.
Awesome.
Yeah, that would be cool. I wish Lauryn Hill would come out with another album, actually.
Yeah. She was on tour recently.
Yeah.
I would love to go see her.
She's pretty amazing.
She really is.
We were going to watch Sister Act 2 recently, and I was like, man, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is our last one. We ask this of everybody.
Okay.
As you know, we're a Christian website.
Yes.
And so we always have to cover our bases. So do you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior?
We're going there.
We're just offering you a chance.
Just,
I will tell you the way that my favorite verse in the Bible is Jesus Christ's first commandment, to love God with all your heart and mind, your entire being, and and his second commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. And that those commandments are what I try to live my life by.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good answer.
It's the truth.
It's not the right answer, but it's a good answer. Yeah,
It's the truth.
We'll have the keyboardist continue.
Yeah. every hand raised, every eye closed.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in, Tulsi.
Thank you.
This is a blast. Everybody, please check out the book, For Love of Country, Leave the Democrat Party Behind. Your copy will be nice and it won't have tattering.
This is true.
We'll link to it in the show notes. So go check it out. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. Great to see you guys.